My 8-week ultrasound report and my blood-stained body are the only witnesses left. Yet today they are trying to prove I was never even pregnant. Lying on the floor in the middle of the night, fighting for my life. The last text my boyfriend sent was, "We are free." That was the moment my world shattered. This is the chilling story of a 19-year-old girl crushed by a web of love, trust and fabricated lies. A story that will send shivers down your spine. But why, after loving him so blindly, was she branded a gold digger? How could a medical student force her to take dangerous pills against her will? Where does this twisted game of betrayal actually end? And how is one girl fighting alone against a powerful family and their dirty lies? Hello everyone, I'm Sneha and I'm here with you today. Let's dive deep into the dark reality hidden behind the glitz and glamour of the American dream. Let's get into the full story. They say your freshman year of college is the year that defines you. It's supposed to be about self-discovery, about late night study sessions in the library, cheap coffee and the kind of freedom that tastes like crisp autumn air. I was 19. I had that specific kind of naivety that only exists before the world breaks your heart for the first time. I looked at the world through a lens of absolute possibility and I didn't see the edges, the sharp corners or the shadows waiting in the peripherals. I only saw the light and he was the brightest light of them all. I won't tell you his name. Names have power and he has taken enough of mine already. Let's just call him the medical student. That was his identity, his armour and eventually his alibi. We met in that blur of early semester chaos. He was older, established, walking with the kind of confidence that you can't fake. He came from a world I only knew from movies, old money, family legacy, the kind of people who don't just walk into a room, they own it. He was brilliant, handsome, in a sharp, almost intimidating way. And when he looked at me, I felt like I was the only person standing in a crowded room. It started like a fairy tale. That's the cliche, isn't it? But cliches exist for a reason. He swept me off my feet with a precision that I now realise was calculated. But back then, it felt like destiny. He would wait for me after my classes, leaning against his car, that easy smile playing on his lips. We would drive through the city with the windows down, the wind tangling my hair, listening to music that he liked, eating at places I couldn't afford, but he paid for without blinking. "I love you," he told me one night, and the words were heavy, serious. "I'll always be here," he promised. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was training to save lives. He was a healer in the making, someone who dedicated their life to medicine, to care, to ethics. Surely a person like that possessed a heart made of gold. I handed him my trust, my body and my secrets, thinking I was placing them in a safe deposit box. I didn't know I was handing a loaded gun to someone who would eventually pull the trigger. Our relationship deepened. We became intimate. It wasn't just physical, it was an emotional tethering. I built my days around his schedule. I learned the terminology of his exams. I brought him coffee when he was studying late for anatomy. I was the supportive girlfriend, the one who was lucky to be chosen by the golden boy. Summer faded into fall. The leaves on campus started turning that burnt orange and deep red, crunching under our boots as we walked to his apartment. The air got colder, but I felt warm. I was in love. Then came September. It's funny how the body knows before the mind does. It starts with a whisper, a subtle shift in the internal atmosphere. My last period had started on September the 5th. It was a normal cycle, nothing out of the ordinary. But as October crept in, that rhythm was broken. At first, I brushed it off. Freshman year stress, right? The change in diet, the lack of sleep, the anxiety of exams. I told myself it was nothing. I ignored the fatigue that was settling into my bones, a tiredness that sleep couldn't fix. I ignored the way my morning coffee suddenly smelled like gasoline, making my stomach turn. I ignored the tenderness, the mood swings, the strange metallic taste in my mouth. But denial is a fragile shield. By late October, the whisper had turned into a scream. I remember the day I finally decided to go to the pharmacy. It was a Tuesday, overcast and grey. The sky looked like a bruised sheet of metal. I pulled the hood of my sweatshirt up, keeping my head down as I walked into to the drugstore, I felt like a criminal. I felt like everyone in the aisles knew what I was looking for. I walked past the candy, past the cold medicine, straight to the aisle with the feminine hygiene products. My hand shook as I reached for the box. Pregnancy test, 99% accuracy. I bought 3 of them, just to be sure. The walk back to my dorm room was a blur. I don't remember crossing the street. I don't remember unlocking my door. I just remember the sound of my own heart. Thump, 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 thump. It was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I went into the bathroom and locked the door. The fan overhead hummed with a rattling noise, a sound that seemed deafening in the small tiled space. I followed the instructions and then I waited. Those 3 minutes were the longest years of my life. I sat on the edge of the bathtub staring at the white sticks on the counter. I bargained with God. I bargained with the universe. Please, I whispered into the empty room, please let it be negative. I'm only 19. I have plans. I have a scholarship. I have a life. I thought about him. If it was positive, what would he say? He loved me, right? He was a medical student. He understood biology. He understood life. We were a team. He had said, I'll always be here. If the worst happened, we would figure it out together. That thought was the only thing keeping me from falling apart right there on the cold tile floor. Time was up. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I walked over to the counter and looked down. The first stick, 2 lines. The second stick, 2 lines. The third stick, positive. The air left the room. My vision tunneled. It felt like the ground had opened up beneath me and I was falling into a dark, cold ocean. I gripped the edge of the sink, gasping for air, staring at that pink dye that had just rewritten my entire future. Pregnant. The word echoed in my mind, bouncing off the walls. I was carrying a life. His life, our life. Panic set in, sharp and cold. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone as I pulled it out of my pocket. I needed to hear his voice. I needed him to tell me it was going to be okay. I needed him to be the man he promised he was. I dialed his number. It rang. Ring, ring. Ring. Hey, you've reached name. I can't come to the phone right now. Leave a message. His voicemail, his cheerful, confident voice. I hung up. I dialed again. Ring, ring. No answer. I sent a text. My fingers felt numb as I typed the words. We need to talk. It's an emergency. Please call me. I sat on the bathroom floor for hours. The sun went down and the room filled with shadows. I wrapped my arms around my knees, rocking back and forth, the 3 plastic sticks sitting on the counter like a judge's gavel. Finally, late that night, my phone buzzed. I scrambled to grab it, hope flaring in my chest like a match in the dark. It was a text from him, short, impersonal. Super busy with rotations, can't talk, what's up? I stared at the screen. Super busy? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. I didn't want to do this over text, but I couldn't hold it in. I typed it out, the truth that was currently burning a hole in my soul. I took a test, actually 3. They are all positive. I'm pregnant. I hit send. I watched the screen. Delivered. Then the 3 little dots appeared. He was typing. The dots disappeared. They appeared again. Then they stopped. I waited. 1 minute passed. 5 minutes. 20. An hour. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. It was the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. I called him again. It went straight to voicemail and he had turned his phone off. That night, lying in my twin-sized dorm bed, staring at the ceiling, I felt the first crack in the foundation of my perfect life. I put my hand on my stomach. It was flat, unchanged, yet everything was different. I realised then that the fairy tale was dissolving. The prince wasn't rushing to the tower to save me. The drawbridge was up and I was on the outside. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there waiting for a call that wouldn't come until much later, and by then the tone of his voice would be unrecognisable. November 9th was approaching. I would need an ultrasound. I would need to see a doctor, and as the sun rose on a grey bleak morning, I realised with a terrifying clarity I was going to have to do the first part of this journey alone. The medical student with the bright future was busy, and I, the 19-year-old freshman, was about to learn that in the real world, love doesn't conquer all. Sometimes it's the weapon used to destroy you. This was just the beginning. The nightmare hadn't even truly started yet. Silence is a funny thing. We usually think of it as peaceful, a break from the noise of the world, but there is a different kind of silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that fills a room when you're waiting for an answer that never comes. That was the silence I lived in for the days following that text message. I'm pregnant. Those two words sat in our chat history like a bomb that had detonated, but the shockwave was moving in slow motion. He hadn't replied. Not that night, not the next morning. The boy who used to text me, "Good morning, beautiful," before I even opened my eyes was gone. In his place was a ghost. I would see him online. I would see the little green dot next to his name on social media mocking me. He was there. He was scrolling, liking, existing. He just wasn't existing for me. I went to my classes like a zombie. I sat in lecture halls surrounded by hundreds of other students, listening to professors drone on about history and economics, but all I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears. I felt marked, like there was a neon sign above my head blinking crisis that everyone could see except me. Finally, after 3 days of radio silence, he called. I was in the cafeteria staring at a sandwich I couldn't eat. My phone buzzed on the table and his name flashed on the screen. My heart leapt into my throat, a mix of relief and terror. I grabbed the phone and ran out into the hallway, finding a quiet corner near the stairwell. Hello, and my voice was trembling. I hated how weak I sounded. Hey, his voice was flat, cold. It sounded like he was talking to a telemarketer, not the girl he claimed to love. I got your text. And? I whispered, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. Did you hear me? The tests were positive. Yeah, I saw, he said, and I could hear the annoyance in his tone. Look, I've been incredibly busy with exams. This isn't exactly a great time for drama, okay? Drama. I felt like I'd been slapped. Creating life, or the potential of it, was now just drama to him, an inconvenience to his schedule. This isn't drama, I said, my voice rising slightly. This is real. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I need you, he sighed, a long, exasperated sigh that I would come to know very well over the next few weeks. I can't deal with this right now. We'll talk later. Just don't tell anyone. You hear me? Don't say a word to anyone. It could ruin my reputation at the med school. His reputation. Not my health, not our situation, his reputation. But I need to see a doctor, I stammered. I need to confirm it. There's an appointment. I can't go. He cut me off. I have labs. You handle it. Let me know what they say. I have to go. And he hung up. The line went dead. I stood in that stairwell for a long time, listening to the dial tone, realising that the person I thought was my partner had just demoted me to a nuisance. November 9th arrived with a biting chill in the air. The sky was a slate grey, threatening snow that never fell. I had made an appointment at a Planned Parenthood clinic about 40 minutes away from campus. I didn't want to go to the University Health Centre. I was too afraid of running into someone we knew. I was protecting his secret, even as he was abandoning me. I drove myself. That drive is etched into my memory like a nightmare. My hands on the steering wheel were shaking. I had to turn the radio off because every love song felt like a lie, and every upbeat pop track felt like it was mocking my misery. It was just the sound of the tyres on the pavement and the racing thoughts in my head. What if I'm not actually pregnant? What if the tests were wrong? Maybe it's a mistake. That tiny sliver of hope was the only thing keeping me from driving the car off the road. The clinic was a brick building on the edge of town. I parked in the back, pulling my coat tight around me. Walking into that waiting room felt like walking into a different dimension. The air smelled of antiseptic and old magazines. It was quiet, filled with women of all ages. Some looked bored, scrolling on their phones. Some looked nervous, bouncing their legs. Some looked devastated. I checked in at the front desk. The receptionist was kind, her voice soft, but her pity felt like sandpaper on my skin. Name? Date of birth? Is there anyone with you today? That question hung in the air. No, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Just me. I sat in the corner of the waiting room, staring at a poster on the wall about prenatal vitamins. I watched the door every time it opened, a foolish part of me hoping that he would burst through, that he would rush in, breathless, apologising, saying he couldn't let me do this alone, that it was all a test of my strength or some misunderstanding. But the door only opened for strangers. A couple walked in, the guy holding the girl's hand, rubbing her back, whispering to her. I had to look away. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging. I pulled my beanie down lower, hiding my face. I felt so small, so incredibly alone in a room full of people. Sneha! The nurse called my name. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly, and followed her down the long long, sterile hallway. The exam room was cold. I sat on the paper-covered table, the crinkling sound echoing in the small space. The nurse asked me a series of questions, dates, symptoms, history. I answered them mechanically. Then came the ultrasound. The technician was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Okay, honey," she said gently. "This might be a little cold." She applied the gel to my stomach. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the little dots, trying to dissociate, trying to float away from my body so I didn't have to feel the reality of what was happening. Then there was a sound. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was fast, rhythmic, strong. "There it is," the technician said, pointing to the monitor. "That's the heartbeat." I turned my head slowly to look at the screen. It was all grey static to me, except for that one little flicker, a tiny bean-shaped shadow. "You are measuring at 8 weeks and 3 days, she said, typing something on the keyboard. 8 weeks, 3 days. That meant this was real. There was no mistake, no false positive. There was a life inside of me, a heart beating, fueled by my own blood. A wave of emotion crashed over me that I couldn't name. Was it fear, love, regret? It was everything all at once. For a split second, I felt connection to that grainy image. It was mine. It was ours. "Do you want a picture?" she asked. I nodded, unable to speak. She printed out a small, glossy black and white photo and handed it to me. I held it in my hand, staring at it. 8 weeks, 3 days. I walked out of the clinic, clutching that picture like it was a piece of contraband. I got back into my car and just sat there. The engine was cold. The window started to fog up from my breath. I pulled out my phone. I took a picture of the ultrasound printout. I needed him to see this. I needed him to understand that this wasn't a concept anymore. It was a reality. I sent the photo to him with a caption. "It's real. 8 weeks, 3 days. I heard the heartbeat. Where are you?" I watched the screen. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then a reply. "I'm in a study group. Can't look at this right now." That was it. No. "Are you okay?" No. "How do you feel?" No reaction to the image of his own child. Just "can't look at this right now." Rage started to bubble up under the sadness. How could he be so detached? How could he be studying for exams to save strangers' lives while completely ignoring the life he helped create? I drove back to campus in a daze. That night I lay in bed with the ultrasound picture tucked under my pillow. I felt a shifting inside me. Not physical, but mental. The girl who had walked into that relationship with stars in her eyes was dying, and something else was waking up. A terrified, desperate version of me who realised she was trapped. But the real horror wasn't the loneliness. It wasn't the cold exam room or the indifferent text messages. The real horror was what was coming next. Because now that it was confirmed, now that it was real, he couldn't ignore it anymore. He would have to deal with it. And I would soon learn that his way of dealing with it didn't involve doctors or support or love. A few days later, he finally agreed to meet. He told me to come to his apartment. He said we needed to fix this. I remember walking up the stairs to his place, my heart pounding. I thought, okay, this is it. We're going to talk. We're going to make a plan. Maybe he's just scared. Maybe now that he sees me, he'll step up. I knocked on the door. He opened it. He didn't smile. He didn't hug me. He just stepped aside to let me in. The apartment was dark, the blinds drawn. It smelled of stale coffee and something else, something medicinal. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to the couch. I sat. He didn't sit next to me. He stood across the room, leaning against the kitchen counter, his arms crossed. He looked at me not with love, but with calculation, like I was a patient with a disease he needed to cure, or worse, like I was a problem he needed to erase. "So," he started, his voice devoid of any warmth. "You're 8 weeks?" "Yes," I said, reaching into my bag to show him the picture again. "Do you want to see?" "No," he snapped, holding up a hand. "Put that away. I don't want to see it." I froze, my hand hovering over my bag. "We need to be practical," he said, walking over to a drawer in the kitchen. He pulled something out. It was a small plastic bag. Inside were pills, unmarked, white and hexagonal. My stomach dropped. "What is that?" He walked over and tossed the bag onto the coffee table in front of me. It landed with a soft thud. "It's the solution," he said calmly. "It's an MR kit, medical regulation. You take these and it goes away. No doctors, no records, no ruining my career." I stared at the bag. "You want me to just take these here now?" "It's safe," he said, the medical student persona taking over. "I know the dosage. I know what I'm doing. It's just like a heavy period. You'll be fine." "But I don't know if I want to do this," I whispered. Tears welled up in my eyes. This is a baby." His face hardened. The mask slipped completely. He walked over, looming over me. Sneha, listen to me, he hissed. I am not going to be a father. Not now. Not with you. If you have this kid, you are on your own. My parents will disown me. I'll drop out of med school and I will hate you for the rest of my life. Is that what you want? I looked up at him. The boy I loved. The boy I thought was my soulmate. He was looking at me with pure disgust. Take the pills, he commanded. Prove to me you actually care about my future. I looked at the pills, then I looked at him. I was 19. I was scared. I was weak. And in that dark room, under the weight of his anger and my own desperation to please him, I made a choice that would haunt me forever. I reached for the bag. The plastic bag felt impossibly heavy in my hand. It was just a small, clear Ziploc, the kind you'd use to pack a sandwich for lunch or store loose change. But inside, rattling with a dry, hollow sound, were the pills that would define the rest of my life. I looked up at him. The room was dim, illuminated only by the harsh, artificial light of the kitchen hood. He was leaning back against the counter, his arms crossed over his chest, watching me with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing a lab rat. There was no warmth in his eyes, no conflict, just an impatient expectation. Water, he said. It wasn't an offer, it was an instruction. He reached into the cupboard and pulled out a glass, filling it from the tap. He set it down on the coffee table in front of me with a sharp clink. The water swirled, settling into calmness, while a tsunami was raging inside my chest. Are you sure this is safe? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Shouldn't I be in a clinic? He let out a short, sharp breath through his nose, a sound of annoyance. I am a doctor, practically. I know what these are. It's a standard protocol. People do this every day. Stop overthinking it. Stop overthinking it. As if erasing a heartbeat was the same as taking an aspirin for a headache. I picked up the packet. My fingers were trembling so bad I could barely tear the foil. I looked at the pill. It was small, unassuming. It looked innocent, but I knew what it was designed to do. It was designed to starve the pregnancy, to cut off the supply line, to end it. Do it for us, he said softly. The tone shift was jarring. Suddenly, he was the boyfriend again, the charmer. Do it so we can have a future, so I can finish school, become a surgeon, and give you everything you deserve. We're just not ready yet, babe. This is the responsible choice. The responsible choice. The words tasted like ash. I put the pill on my tongue. It tasted chalky and bitter. I grabbed the glass of water and swallowed it down, feeling it slide down my throat like a stone. I squeezed my eyes shut, fighting the urge to gag, fighting the urge to scream. When I opened my eyes, he was smiling, a tight, relieved smile. Good girl, he said. He actually said that. Good girl, like I had just performed a trick, like I was a pet that had finally obeyed a command. You should go home now, he said, checking his watch. The cramping might start in a few hours. You'll want to be in your own bed. He was kicking me out. He had administered the cure to his problem, and now he wanted the messy part, the pain, the bleeding, the tears to happen somewhere else, somewhere he didn't have to see it. You're not coming with me? I asked, standing up. My legs felt unsteady. I have a jagged shift tomorrow, he lied. I knew it was a lie. I knew his schedule. Text me if it gets bad, but you'll be fine. I walked out of his apartment into the cold November air. I felt hollowed out. I got into my car and drove back to my dorm, the bitter taste still lingering on the back of my tongue. By the time I got to my room, the nausea hit. It wasn't a gradual wave. It was a violent crash. I barely made it to the bathroom before my body tried to reject what I'd just done. I spent the next 4 hours curled up on the cold tile floor of the communal bathroom, shivering uncontrollably. My stomach cramped, but not in the way he described. It was a sharp, twisting pain, like my insides were being wrung out. I checked my phone, no texts. I sent him one. I'm sick, really sick. It hurts. 10 minutes later. Normal side effect. Drink water. Try to sleep. Normal. I lay there, sweat, matting my hair to my forehead, waiting for the bleeding to start, waiting for the tissue to pass, as he had so clinically put it. I waited for the end, but the end didn't come. The next morning, I woke up in my bed, weak and dehydrated. The nausea was still there, a low-level hum in the background. But there was no blood. And no heavy cramping, just a profound sense of wrongness. A week passed, a week of living in limbo. Every morning I woke up expecting the pregnancy symptoms to fade, but they didn't. My breasts were still tender. The smell of coffee still made me gag. The fatigue was dragging me down like an anchor. I knew, deep down, I knew it hadn't worked. I bought another test. It's a positive. Panic, colder and sharper than before, seized me. I called him. He didn't answer. I called again. Finally, on the 5th fifth try, he picked up. It didn't work. I sobbed into the phone. I'm still pregnant. The test is still positive. I'm sick, but nothing happened. There was a long silence on the other end. Then a curse word. Damn it! Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Just disappointment that the problem persisted. Meet me, he said. Same place. Tonight. I didn't want to go. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to go to a real doctor, to tell my mum, to do anything but go back to that apartment. But fear is a powerful paralyzer. I was terrified of my parents finding out. I was terrified of the judgment. And foolishly, pathetically, I was still terrified of losing him. I went back. The scene was almost identical to the first time, but the air was heavier. He was pacing when I arrived. He looked stressed, his hair messy. You probably didn't take it right, he accused as soon as I walked in, or your body is just resistant. You have a cyst, right? Maybe that's interfering. I took it exactly how you said. I defended myself, my voice cracking. It just didn't work. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe we shouldn't stop. He snapped. He walked over to the table. There was another packet, different pills this time. This is the second part of the protocol, misoprostol. It forces the uterus to contract. This will work. It has to. He handed me the pills. I take them, all of them. All of them? I asked, looking at the dosage. Is that safe? Last time I got so sick. Do you want to have a baby in the middle of your freshman year? He shot back, his eyes wild. Do you want to be a single mum working minimum wage? Because that's what's going to happen if you don't take these. I told you I'm out. This is your last chance to fix this. The threat hung in the air. I'm out. I looked at the pills. I felt trapped in a nightmare loop. I was the girl in the horror movie who keeps running up the stairs instead of out the front door. I took the pills. This time he didn't even offer me water. I swallowed them dry, my throat constricting. Go! He said, turning his back to me. Well, it'll start soon. I drove home crying. I felt dirty. I felt violated, not by force, but by coercion. I'd let him turn my body into a chemistry experiment because I was too weak to say no. The second dose was worse, much worse. That night, the pain was blinding. It felt like someone was stabbing me with hot knives. I lay in my bed, biting into my pillow to keep from screaming, afraid my roommates would hear. I curled into a ball, rocking back and forth, praying for it to be over. I bled a little, just spotting. I waited for the relief. I waited for the feeling of emptiness that would signal it was done. But 2 days later, I was vomiting again. 3 days later, my jeans still wouldn't button comfortably. 5 days later, I went to the campus clinic for a discreet checkup, terrified to tell them the truth. I just asked for a general exam. The nurse took my blood pressure. She looked at my chart. You're experiencing nausea? She asked. Yes. Any possibility of pregnancy? I hesitated. I don't think so. She ran a quick urine test. She came back in, smiling. Well, honey, looks like you were pregnant. Strong positive. The room spun. 2 doses, 2 weeks of torture, and the baby was still there, holding on, fighting against the poisons I had fed it. I walked out of the clinic and collapsed on a bench near the quad. It was November. The trees were bare, looking like skeletal fingers reaching for the grey sky. I pulled out my phone to text him. My fingers hovered over the screen. I realised then that telling him wouldn't help. He had no more pills. He had no more plans. He had only anger. I sent the text. It didn't work. Still pregnant? His reply came hours later. I can't do this anymore. You're on your own. Figure it out. And then he blocked me. I sat there on that bench as the sun went down, the campus lights flickering on one by one. I was 19. I was pregnant. I had taken illegal medical drugs twice, and the father of my child had just vanished into the digital void. I was cornered. I had no money for a surgical procedure. I had no support system nearby. I was drowning and the water was rising fast. I thought about who could help me. My mother. No, it would break her heart. My friends. They were just kids like me. They wouldn't understand. Then I remembered his sister. She was older. She was a woman. She came from that same polished high society world, but maybe, just maybe, she would have a heart. Maybe she would understand that her brother was leaving a girl to rot. Desperation makes you do foolish things. It makes you trust people you shouldn't. I found her number in my contacts. I had saved it months ago when we were all planning a surprise party for him that never happened. I stared at the name Big Sister. I didn't know it then, but pressing that call button was the second biggest mistake of my life. The pills had attacked my body, but what was coming next, that was going to attack my soul. I took a deep breath, wiped the tears from my cheeks and dialed. The phone rang. 1 ring, 2 rings. That hollow electronic trill that sounds like a question mark suspended in the air. I held my breath, clutching the phone so tightly my hand cramped. I was sitting in my car parked in the darkest corner of the campus therapist visit a lot, hiding from the world. I was desperate. I was scared, and I was operating on a naive assumption that would soon cost me the last shred of my dignity. I assumed that because she was a woman, she would understand. I thought she's his older sister. She's sensible. She's kind. Or at least she seemed kind at that one dinner we went to. I imagined she would be horrified that her little brother had fed me illegal pills and then blocked my number. I imagined she would step in, act as the mediator, maybe even help me get to a real doctor. The line clicked open. Hello! Her voice was crisp, polished. The voice of someone who grew up in a house with a grand piano and white carpets that never got dirty. Hi, it's Sneha. I stammered, my voice thick with unshed tears. I'm sorry to call you so late. I didn't know who else to turn to. There was a pause. A beat of silence that felt calculated. Oh, Sneha, she said. Her tone didn't dip into concern. It flattened into something guarded. Why are you calling me? I can't reach him, I rushed to explain, the words tumbling out. He blocked me and I'm in trouble. We're in trouble. I'm pregnant. He gave me these pills twice and they didn't work. And now I'm sick and I don't know what to do and he won't talk to me. I broke down. I let the sob I'd been holding back for days escape. I waited for the gasp. I waited for the, oh my God, are you okay? Instead, I heard a sigh, not of sympathy, but of annoyance. Like I had just told her I spilled red wine on her favourite blouse. Listen, she cut in, her voice dropping an octave, becoming ice cold. I know about the situation. He told me. I froze. He told you? Yes, and honestly, I'm disappointed. Not in him, in you. My brain couldn't process the words. Me? But he's the one who... Stop! She snapped. The veneer of politeness vanished completely. Let's cut the innocent act, shall we? I've seen girls like you before. You come into a guy's life, you see the potential, you see the family money, the medical degree, the status, and you think, jackpot. I sat there stunned, my mouth slightly open. What are you talking about? You're a gold digger, Sneha, she said, enunciating every syllable. You're looking for a payout or a ring or a way to claw yourself out of whatever low-rent life you come from. The words hit me like physical blows. That's not true. I love him. Love? She laughed, a harsh, dry sound. Please, look at you. Look at your family. Your mother works a desk job for peanuts. Your father isn't even in the picture. You think my brother, a future surgeon, top of his class from our family, would ever seriously be with someone like you? You were a fling, a distraction, and now you're trying to trap him with a baby. I felt the blood drain from my face. I had expected anger, maybe confusion. I hadn't expected this calculated classist cruelty. She wasn't just rejecting my plea for help. She was dissecting my existence. I'm not trying to trap anyone, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. I took the pills he gave me. I tried to do what he wanted. I'm the one suffering here. So you say, she countered smoothly. Or maybe you didn't take them. Maybe you're lying about the whole thing to keep him on the hook. Honestly, you're pathetic. You're ugly. You're poor and you're desperate. Stay away from my brother. If you contact him or anyone in our family again, you'll regret it. Click. She hung up. Air sucked. I sat in the silence of my car, the phone still pressed to my ear. The dial tone buzzed, mocking me. Ugly, poor, fatherless, trap. Is that how they saw me? All those months when I was sitting at their table or laughing in his passenger seat, was I just a joke to them, a temporary amusement for the rich boy before he settled down with someone of his own status? I felt dirty. Shame, hot and suffocating, washed over me. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were puffy, my skin pale, my hair messy. Was she right? The gaslighting had begun. But the nightmare was only shifting gears. Because the family didn't just want silence, they wanted to control the narrative. If I was the villain, the psycho ex, then their golden boy remained spotless. The next day, the digital assault began. It started with a notification on Instagram, a DM from one of his best friends, a guy I'd hung out with, a guy I'd made coffee for. Yo, leave him alone. Stop making up stories. It's embarrassing. Then another one. You're crazy. Everyone knows you're faking it. Then came the comments. I logged into Facebook to see a status update he had posted. It didn't name me directly, but it didn't have to. Everyone knew who he was dating. Crazy how some people will invent an entire pregnancy just to manipulate you. Stay toxic, folks. dodged a bullet. The post had 50 likes. His friends, his frat brothers, people I sat next to in class, they were all laughing. They were all hearting the destruction of my reputation. I walked across campus that afternoon feeling like a leper. I pulled my hood up, keeping my head down. Every time I heard a laugh, I thought it was about me. Every time someone whispered, I thought they were saying, "That's her. That's the psycho." I was 19 years old. I was dealing with a failed abortion, a body that was still pregnant, and hormones that were raging out of control. And now I was being hunted by a pack of wolves in designer clothes. I went back to my dorm room and locked the door. My roommate was out. I was thankful for that. I didn't want anyone to see me. My phone pinged again. A text from an unknown number. "We know where you live. Keep your mouth shut or we'll make you a threat." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Was this from him? From his friends? From the sister? I felt a new kind of fear. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. This was dangerous. These were people with money, influence, and clearly no moral compass. I tried to block the numbers, but new ones would pop up. They were enjoying this. It was a game to them. Break the girl. Why? I asked the empty room. Why are they doing this? The answer was simple, and it was the hardest pill to swallow, because I was disposable to them. I was a loose end that needed to be cut off. And since the medical pills hadn't worked to erase the problem, they were now using psychological warfare to erase me. I lay on my bed, curling into a fetal position. My hand rested on my stomach. Inside, against all odds, a heart was still beating. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And outside, the world was screaming that I was a liar. "You're not real," his friend had texted. "The pregnancy isn't real." They were trying to rewrite reality. They were gaslighting me on a massive scale. There were moments lying there in the dark where I actually started to question my own sanity. Did I make this up? Is the ultrasound fake? Am I crazy? I had to pull out the picture again, the crumpled black and white printout. I stared at it until my eyes burned. No, this is real. I am here. This is happening. But being right doesn't save you when you have no voice. By November 20th, I was a shell of a person. I stopped going to classes. I stopped eating. I lived on Gatorade and fear. The symptoms in my body were changing too. The nausea was fading, replaced by a dull, heavy ache in my lower abdomen. I didn't know it then, but the pills had done something. They hadn't finished the job, but they had started a chain reaction. A slow, silent catastrophe was unfolding inside my uterus. And the stress, the relentless, crushing stress of the bullying was accelerating it. I remember looking at my phone on the night of November 21st. I scrolled through the messages. Gold digger, liar, trash, die. I put the phone down and I felt numb. I didn't cry that night. I was past tears. I was in the eye of the storm. I thought about his sister's voice again. My brother, a future surgeon. A surgeon is supposed to heal. A doctor is supposed to do no harm. But this doctor and his family had taken a scalpel to my life and were slowly, methodically cutting me apart. I closed my eyes, praying for sleep, praying for a way out. I didn't know that the way out was coming, but it wouldn't be a rescue. It would be a rupture. The pain started as a whisper in my lower back, just a twinge. I ignored it. I thought it was just the stress. But as the hours ticked by, the whisper turned into a growl. November 22nd was dawning, the day my body would finally break under the weight of their secrets, the day the physical pain would eclipse the emotional torture. I was alone. The boy was gone. The world was against me, and the time bomb inside me was about to go off. Pain has a way of erasing time. You don't look at the clock and think it's been 10 minutes. You measure time in waves, the crest of agony, the brief trough of relief, and then the next wave crashing down harder than the last. November 22nd started like any other day in my self-imposed exile. I was holed up in my apartment, the curtains drawn against the grey afternoon light. I was trying to study for a biology midterm. I knew I would probably fail, but the words on the page were swimming. The dull ache in my lower back, the one that had started the night before, had shifted. It had moved to the front, settling deep in my pelvis. It felt like a heavy stone was sitting on my uterus, grinding down. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just stress cramps, or maybe the lingering effects of those pills from weeks ago. I popped 2 ibuprofen, drank a glass of water, and tried to focus on cellular respiration. By 6 p.m, the stone had turned into a vice. I was lying on my couch, clutching a heating pad. The pain was coming in rhythmic pulses now, sharp, stabbing. It felt like something was trying to claw its way out of me. I picked up my phone. My thumb hovered over his contact name. I had unblocked him, hoping for a miracle, hoping for an apology. Should I text him? Should I tell him it hurts? Then I remembered his sister's voice. Stay away from my brother. I remembered the messages from his friends. Liar. If I told him I was in pain, he would probably think I was faking it again. Another drama to get his attention. So I put the phone down. I decided to tough it out. I was 19 and I had learned the hard way that no one was coming to save me. By 9 p.m, I couldn't stand up straight. I crawled to the bathroom, clutching the wall for support. The pain was blinding now. It radiated down my thighs, locking my muscles. I was sweating, cold, clammy sweat that soaked through my t-shirt. I looked in the mirror. My face was grey. My eyes were sunken, terrified. Something is wrong. This isn't normal. I reached for the medicine cabinet. I found a bottle of stronger painkillers, leftovers from when I had my wisdom teeth out last year. I didn't read the label. I didn't check if they were safe for pregnancy. I just needed the pain to stop. I took one. Then in a panic, I took another. That was a mistake. 30 minutes later, the world tilted. I was lying on the floor of my living room. The carpet felt rough against my cheek. The pain hadn't stopped. It had mutated. It felt like my insides were tearing apart. And then I felt it. A warm, wet sensation. I sat up, gasping. I looked down. Blood. It wasn't just spotting. It was a hemorrhage. Dark crimson blood soaking through my sweatpants, pooling on the beige carpet. Oh God, I whispered. My voice sounded tiny in the empty apartment. Oh God, please no. I tried to stand up, but my knees buckled. I fell back down, slipping in the mess. The smell of iron filled the air, thick and metallic. It smelled like a slaughterhouse. Oh, I was bleeding out. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I was losing so much blood so fast. My vision started to swim. Black spots danced at the edges of my sight. I needed help. I needed an ambulance. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table, my bloody fingers smearing the screen. I tried to unlock it, but my hands were shaking so violently I kept entering the wrong passcode. 1, 2, 3, 4. Incorrect. Panic surged. I was going to die here. I was going to bleed to death on the floor of my college apartment alone while he was probably out studying or partying, completely oblivious. Finally, I unlocked it. I didn't call 911. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid of the bill. Maybe I was afraid of the sirens. I called my roommate, Sarah, who was at the library. Sarah, I rasped when she picked up. Help me. Sneha, what's wrong? You sound... Blood. There's so much blood. Please come home. I dropped the phone. The room was spinning. The ceiling fan overhead blurred into a grey circle. I lay back down. The pain was receding now, replaced by a terrifying numbness. The cold was seeping into my bones. Is this dying? I wondered. It wasn't like the movies. There was no white light, just a cold, sticky floor and the sound of my own shallow breathing. I thought about the baby. The 8-week, 3-day-old flicker on the screen. I'm sorry, I thought. I'm so sorry. I didn't know if I was apologising to the baby for failing to protect it or to myself for letting it happen. The door burst open. Sneha! Sarah's voice, footsteps running, then a scream. Oh my God, oh my God. She was beside me, her hands hovering, afraid to touch me. Her face was pale with shock. I'm calling 911, she yelled, fumbling for her phone. I remember fragments after that. The sound of sirens wailing in the distance, getting louder. The heavy tread of boots on the stairs. Paramedics in uniform storming the room. Their voices were loud, urgent. BP is dropping. Get 2 lines in now. She's hemorrhaging. They lifted me onto a stretcher. The movement sent a fresh wave of agony through me and I blacked out for a second. The ride to the hospital was a blur of lights and noise. The paramedic was asking me questions. How far along were you? 8 weeks, I whispered. Did you take anything? Pills. He gave me pills. What kind? Sneha, stay with me. What kind of pills? I couldn't answer. The darkness was pulling me under. The emergency room was chaotic. Bright lights, beeping machines, people shouting orders. They cut my clothes off. They stuck needles in my arms. I felt exposed, vulnerable, a piece of meat on a slab. A doctor appeared above me, a woman with a stern face. We need to do an ultrasound immediately. Check for retained tissue. They wheeled the machine over. The same cold gel, the same wand. But this time there was no heartbeat sound. Whoosh. Whoosh. Silence. Oh, the doctor looked at the screen. Her face was unreadable. The uterus is clearing, she said to the nurse. Incomplete miscarriage. We need to help it along or she'll go septic. Miscarriage. The word hung in the air. The battle was over. The baby, the problem, the miracle, the mistake was gone. They gave me something for the pain. Morphine, maybe. The sharp edges of the world softened. I floated in a haze of drug-induced calm while they worked on my body. I lay there staring at the fluorescent lights, tears leaking silently from the corners of my eyes. I felt empty, physically, spiritually empty, like a house that had been gutted by fire. Hours later, I was moved to a recovery room. It was quiet. The bleeding had slowed. I was hooked up to an IV bag that dripped steadily. Drip, drip, drip. I was alive, but I didn't feel lucky. I felt like a ghost. My phone was on the bedside table. Sarah had brought it. I reached for it. It was 2 a.m. I needed to tell him it was over. He had won. The problem was solved. I typed the message. My fingers were still weak. I'm in the hospital. I had a miscarriage. It's gone. I almost died. I sent it. I waited. I don't know what I expected. Maybe shock. Maybe a sliver of humanity. Maybe I'm coming right now. The phone buzzed. I picked it up. The screen lit up the dark room. It was from him. One sentence, no punctuation, no emotion. At least now no one can prove anything. We are free. I stared at the words. We are free. Not are you okay? Not I'm sorry. Not thank God you're alive. We are free. He was relieved. While I was lying in a hospital bed smelling of antiseptic and dried blood, mourning the loss of a part of me, he was celebrating his freedom. To him, the death of his child wasn't a tragedy. It was a loophole. It was an escape route. A coldness settled over me that had nothing to do with the hospital air. It was the chill of absolute realization. I had been in love with a monster who wore a white coat, a monster who knew exactly what to say to get what he wanted, a monster who saw human life as nothing more than a liability. We are free, I whispered to the empty room. No, I corrected myself, my voice cracking. You are free. I am haunted. Then a second text came through. I'll come by 5 minutes. Need to check something. My heart hammered against my ribs. He's coming. Why? To check on me or to check something? To make sure the evidence was truly gone? To make sure I wouldn't talk? I sat up, wincing at the pain. I stared at the door. I waited. 11 p.m. turned to 11:05, 11:10, 11:30. He never came. I sat by the window of the hospital room looking down at the parking lot, watching the cars come and go, watching the world continue on as if my life hadn't just imploded. He wasn't coming. He never intended to come. It was just another lie, another power play to keep me waiting, to keep me on the hook, to keep me scared. I was alone, truly completely alone. But as the sun began to rise on November 23rd, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange, something shifted in me. The fear was still there, yes, the sadness was overwhelming, but the naivety, that was gone. It had bled out on the carpet of my apartment. The girl who believed in fairy tales died that night, and the woman who woke up in that hospital bed, she was broken, she was scarred, but she was alive, and she was beginning to realise that we are free wasn't just a cruel text, it was a challenge. He thought he was free from the consequences. I'd say he thought he had buried the truth along with the pregnancy, but he forgot one thing. He forgot about me. I was the witness, I was the evidence, and I was still here. But before I could even think about fighting back, the final blow was coming. The gaslighting was about to reach a level so twisted, so insane that even I couldn't have predicted it. They weren't just going to celebrate the miscarriage, they were going to claim it never happened at all. They released me from the emergency room at 4 a.m. That's the thing about a miscarriage. Unless you're actively dying, they patch you up, make sure your vitals are stable, and send you home. There's no cast for a broken spirit. There are no crutches for a hollowed out body. Just a packet of thick pads, a prescription for painkillers, and a discharge paper that says spontaneous abortion in clinical black ink. My roommate Sarah drove me home in silence. The streets of the college town were empty, the street lights blurring into streaks of orange against the wet windshield. It was raining, a cold November rain that stripped the last of the autumn leaves from the trees. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching my stomach. The physical pain had dulled to a constant throbbing ache, like a bruise that went all the way to my core. But the mental space, that was a vacuum. I felt light. Too light. For weeks I had carried the weight of two lives, mine and the potential one growing inside me. Now I was just me again, but a lesser version, a damaged version. We got back to the apartment. Sarah helped me to the couch. She was trying so hard to be brave, but I could see the terror in her eyes. She had seen me bleeding on the floor. She had seen the reality of what love had done to me. "Do you need anything?" she asked, hovering with a glass of water. "Tea? A blanket?" "I just need my phone," I whispered. She hesitated, then handed it to me. "Sneha, maybe you shouldn't." "I need to know," I said. She nodded and went into her room, leaving the door cracked open just in case. I was alone in the living room. The digital clock on the microwave read 4:45 a.m. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I stared at the black screen of my phone. I had texted him from the hospital. "I lost it. It's gone. I almost died." I unlocked the screen. There was a notification, a text message received 20 minutes ago. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic bird-like fluttering. I clicked it open. The sender was him, the medical student, the father. I read the message once and then twice, then a third time, trying to make the words make sense in a human context. "At least now, no one can prove anything. We are free." I stopped breathing. The air in the room seemed to freeze. "We are free." I looked for the sorrow. I looked for the shock. I looked for a shred of concern for the girl who had just spent the night hemorrhaging in an ER because of the pills he provided. There was nothing. Just relief. He wasn't mourning a loss, he was celebrating an acquittal. To him, that 8-week-old life wasn't a baby, it was evidence. It was a threat to his career, his reputation, his pristine family image, and now that the evidence was washed away, he felt liberated. "Free!" I whispered the word out loud. It tasted like bile. He was free, he could go back to his rotations, his frat parties, his family dinners. He could walk around campus with his head held high, the golden boy with the bright future. But me, I wasn't free. I was shackled to this trauma. I was the one bleeding into a hospital pad. I was the one who would have nightmares about red-stained carpets for the rest of my life. I typed a reply. My fingers were shaking so hard I kept hitting the wrong keys. "Free! I almost died. I'm alone. I'm scared." I hit send. The 3 dots appeared immediately. He was awake. "I'm coming over," the text read. "Give me 5 minutes. I need to see you." My breath hitched. He was coming. Despite the cruelty of his previous text, a pathetic, desperate part of me lit up. He's coming! He wants to see me. Maybe the free text was just shock. Maybe he realised what he said. Maybe he was coming to hold me, to apologise, to cry with me. "Okay," I typed back. "I'm waiting." I sat up. I wiped the smudged mascara from under my eyes. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders. I wanted to look okay. I wanted him to see me and realise that I was still the girl he loved, not just a problem he had solved. I moved to the armchair by the window. Our apartment was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the parking lot and the street below. I watched the entrance. 11 p.m. turned into 11:05. 5 minutes, he had said. He lived only a few blocks away. He should be here. A car turned onto the street and my heart leaped. It drove past. A pizza delivery car. 11:10 p.m. I stared at the phone. No new messages. 11:20 p.m. The street was empty. The rain was picking up, slashing against the glass. 11:30 p.m. Doubt started to creep in, cold and slithering. Why did he say 5 minutes? Was he actually coming? Or was this something else that I suddenly remembered the threats from his friends? "We know where you live. Keep your mouth shut." A new kind of fear gripped me. What if he wasn't coming to comfort me? What if he was coming to make sure I stayed quiet? What if he was bringing his friends? I looked down at my dark apartment. I was alone. Sarah was asleep. The door was locked. But was it enough? I started trembling. Not from the cold, but from pure, unadulterated terror. I imagined his car pulling up. I imagined him storming up the stairs, not with flowers, but with that cold, clinical look in his eyes. The look he had when he handed me the pills. We are free. That implies the problem is fully resolved. What if I was the only loose end left? 11:45 p.m. No one came. 12 a.m. The street lights flickered. I picked up the phone and called him. It rang and rang and rang. Then it went to voicemail. "Well, you've reached the voicemail of..." I hung up and I called again. Voicemail. He wasn't coming. The realisation hit me harder than the miscarriage itself. He had lied. Again. Why? To keep me quiet for the night? To give me false hope so I wouldn't call his parents? Or was it just a power play? Was he sitting in his apartment, looking at his phone, laughing at the thought of me sitting by the window, waiting for a ghost? I sat there for hours. My body stiffened. The pain meds started to wear off, bringing the cramps back with a vengeance. But I didn't move. I kept my eyes on the street like a sentry guarding a ruin. Around 2 a.m, a group of guys walked past on the sidewalk below. They were loud, laughing, probably coming back from a bar. One of them looked up at my window. I ducked behind the curtain, my heart stopping. Were those his friends? Were they checking on me? Paranoia is a heavy blanket. It suffocates you. I felt hunted. did. I felt like a criminal in my own home, hiding in the dark, bleeding and broken, while the person who did this to me was probably sleeping soundly. I finally moved away from the window when the sky began to turn a bruised purple, the first sign of dawn. November the 23rd, he hadn't come. He was never going to come. I looked at that text again. We are free. I realised then that he was right, but not in the way he thought. He was free of the baby, but he had freed me too. He had freed me from the illusion. The boy I loved, the charming medical student, the guy who bought me ice cream and kissed my forehead. He never existed. He was a mask. The real him was this text message. The real him was the silence. The real him was a coward who could strip a girl of her dignity, endanger her life, and then ghost her while she bled. I went into the bathroom. I turned on the light. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a corpse, pale, hollow, dark circles under my eyes that looked like bruises. But my eyes, they were different. The softness was gone. The hope was gone. You're on your own, Sneha, I told my reflection. No one is coming. Not him, not his sister, no one. I washed my face. The water was cold. I went back to the couch and curled up. I didn't sleep. I just lay there listening to the world wake up outside. Cars starting, birds chirping, life going on. I thought the worst was over. I thought, okay, he's gone. The baby is gone. Now I just heal. I thought the silence meant he was done with me. I was wrong. Silence isn't always an ending. Sometimes it's just the deep breath before the scream. Because while I was grieving, they were plotting. While I was crying over the loss of my child, they were rewriting history. He had said no one can prove anything. I didn't realise how literally he meant that. The next morning, I would wake up to a new reality, a reality where my medical records meant nothing, a reality where my trauma was a joke. The physical pain was over. Now the psychological war was about to begin, and their weapon of choice wasn't pills anymore. It was a lie so big, so audacious that it would make me question my own sanity. The text was just the prologue. The gaslighting, that was the main event. The days following November 22nd were a blur of grey skies and painkillers. I stayed in my room, curtains drawn, hiding from a world that I thought had simply forgotten me. I thought the worst part was over. I thought the tragedy was the miscarriage itself, the physical loss, the blood, the empty hollow where a future used to be. I was wrong. The tragedy wasn't over. It was being rewritten. It started on a Tuesday, 3 days after the hospital. I finally turned my phone back on. I expected silence, maybe a few concerned texts from friends I had neglected. Instead, my phone vibrated so hard it almost fell off the nightstand. It wasn't just one message. It was a flood. Instagram DMs, Facebook tags, TikTok comments. I opened one. It was a screenshot of a group chat posted by one of his fraternity brothers. Yo, watch out for Sneha. Total psycho. Heard she faked a pregnancy just to trap name. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Faked. I scrolled down. Yeah, my roommate knows her. She's been obsessed with him. Never was pregnant, just wanted his money. Imagine lying about a baby. That's sick. My hands started to shake. I felt like the floor was tilting under my feet. I had medical reports sitting in my drawer. I had an ultrasound picture of an embryo measuring 8 weeks and 3 days, and I had discharge papers from the ER detailing a spontaneous abortion. And yet, online, in the digital court of public opinion, I was being branded a liar. I went to his profile. He hadn't posted anything directly. He was too smart for that. He was the golden boy, remember? The future surgeon. He kept his hands clean. But his sister, she was the general leading the army. She had posted a long, vague status update about toxic people and protecting your family from manipulators. In the comments, she was replying to people, dropping breadcrumbs. It's sad, really, she wrote. Some girls have medical issues like cysts, and they confuse that with pregnancy, or maybe they just use it as a weapon. We're just glad the truth came out. The cyst. I felt a cold rage ignite in my chest. Yes, I had a small ovarian cyst. It was on my medical chart. It was common. It was harmless. But they had taken that one grain of truth and twisted it into a mountain of lies. They were using his medical background to give their lie credibility. It was just a cyst, they told everyone. The test kit was a false positive because of the cyst. It was a brilliant lie. To the average college student who didn't know better, it sounded sounded plausible. Oh, she had a cyst. She got confused. She's crazy. But any doctor, including him, knew that was impossible. A simple cyst doesn't produce HCG, the pregnancy hormone. A cyst doesn't give you a positive urine test, let alone 3. A cyst doesn't have a heartbeat that you can hear on an ultrasound. He knew! He saw the picture. He gave me the abortion pills twice. Why would he give me pills to kill a cyst? But logic doesn't matter when you're fighting against money and influence. I tried to fight back. I posted a picture of my ultrasound on my private story, captioning it, "It was real. I am grieving. Please stop." Within 10 minutes, my phone rang. It wasn't him. It was a number I didn't recognise. I picked it up. "Is this Sneha?" A man's voice, deep, official. "Yes, I am representing the last name family. We have been made aware that you are sharing private medical information and making defamatory claims against my client regarding a verified medical misunderstanding." Defamatory? I choked out. "I'm telling the truth. I have the reports." "If you continue to harass my client or damage his reputation with these unsubstantiated claims," the lawyer continued, his voice bored and lethal, "we will be forced to file a lawsuit for defamation and emotional distress. You don't have the resources to fight this, Sneha. I suggest you take the post down now." The line went dead. I sat there, the phone slipping from my sweaty palm. A lawsuit. They were going to sue me for telling the truth about my own body. I was 19. I had $40 in my bank account. My mother was struggling to pay bills back home. I couldn't afford a lawyer. I couldn't afford a court case. They knew that. They were counting on it. I deleted the post. I deleted the picture. I sat on my bed and watched as the last piece of proof I had shared with the world vanished into the digital trash can. That was the moment they won. They hadn't just killed the relationship. They hadn't just ignored the baby. They had erased my reality. They had gaslit me so hard that for a second even I looked at the medical report and thought, is this real? Did I imagine the heartbeat? But the pain in my uterus was real. The blood on the carpet was real. The next few weeks were a living hell. I walked onto campus and the whispers followed me like a shadow. That's her. The fake pregnancy girl. The stalker. People who used to be my friends looked the other way. They didn't want to get involved. They didn't want to cross the medical student and his popular, wealthy clique. It was easier to believe the lie than to stand up for the broken girl. I saw him once. It was December, right before winter break. It was snowing. I was walking out of the library and he was walking in with a group of friends. He looked perfect. He was wearing a camel-coloured coat, laughing at something a friend said, and he looked healthy, happy, unburdened. He saw me. His laughter stopped for a fraction of a second. His eyes met mine. I looked for guilt. I looked for shame. But there was nothing, just a cold, blank stare, the stare of a stranger. He looked right through me as if I were a ghost, as if I were transparent. Then he turned back to his friend, laughed again, and walked past. In his mind, I didn't exist anymore. I was a glitch in his perfect life that he had successfully patched. I walked to my car, got inside and screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. I screamed for the injustice. I screamed for the baby that never had a name. I screamed for the girl I used to be, the one who believed in love and goodness. That night, I packed my bags. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't walk those halls anymore. I withdrew from the semester. I lost my scholarship. I lost my freshman year. I went home to my mother, told her I was just stressed, and spent the next 3 months in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling. It's been a while now. The physical wounds have healed. My body has forgotten the trauma, mostly. But the mind remembers. I am alone now. The boy is gone. He's probably in his white coat now, learning how to save lives while bearing the memory of the one he helped destroy. Society moved on. The rumours eventually died down, as rumours do, but I am left with the wreckage. I made mistakes. I know that. I trusted the wrong person. I fell in love with a mirage. I was naive. I was foolish. But does being foolish mean I deserve this? Does falling in love mean I deserve to be medically coerced? Does being young mean I deserve to bleed out on a floor alone? Does being poor mean I deserve to have my truth silenced by a lawyer? I ask myself one question every single day. Is a girl just an object? Are we just things to be used for pleasure and then discarded like trash when the consequences become inconvenient? Are we just collateral damage in a man's journey to success. He said, we are free. He meant he is free. He is free to be a doctor. He is free to marry a girl of his status. He is free to live without a stain on his reputation. But I am free too, in a way he will never understand. I am free from the lie. I know the truth. My body knows the truth. I am not crazy. I am not a gold digger. I am not a liar. I was a mother for 8 weeks and 3 days, and I was a victim of a system that protects the powerful and crushes the vulnerable. I'm telling this story not for revenge. I don't want his money. I don't want to ruin his career. Honestly, I don't even want him to think about me anymore. I am telling this story for the girl sitting in her dorm room right now, staring at a positive test, terrified to call her boyfriend. I am telling this for the girl who is being told she's crazy by the person who is supposed to love her. I am telling this so you know you are not alone and you are not crazy. They can delete the posts, they can threaten the lawsuits, they can rewrite the narrative, but they cannot kill the truth. I am Sneha. I survived the pills. I survived the hemorrhage. I survived the silence. And if my voice shakes while I tell this story, that's okay, because at least I am finally using it. Please keep me in your prayers, not for a miracle, but for peace. Pray that I can one day stand tall again, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Pray that I can look in the mirror and see a human being, not just a problem that was solved. Thank you for listening to my truth. Good night.